I'm back today with another off-the-shelf episode where we're taking a look at a very rare item called Book of the Dragons from 1977. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. These off-the-shelf videos are an opportunity to share an item from my collection with the community. Hopefully it's either something you've never heard of before or something you have heard of but you don't have in your personal collection. This will give you a better idea of exactly what's in it. Today I've got a pretty rare item. It's called Book of the Dragons. It's from 1977. It's produced by David Casciano and M. Fisher. Hope you enjoy today's video. So today we're looking at Book of the Dragons. This is pink, hard to see there. It's a pink heavy stock cover with regular pages folded in half. It's got a couple of staples. As I mentioned, it's a pretty rare item. David Casciano and M. Fisher. It says on the back this is the Attack International Wargaming Association. To my knowledge, I don't know anything else done by that entity. I don't know anything else that was put out by these folks. And I don't have a lot of information about this in terms of print run and things of that nature. So it's got this dragon on the front. It's a little bit of a misnomer, as you'll see here in just a minute. So here's the cover. It's got a really cool drawing of a dragon. It's called the Weird Dragon. We'll see that in a moment. So as I mentioned, published in 1977 by Attack International Wargaming Association. There's no price on this cover. It's a 12-page booklet, not counting the heavy stock cover that's on it. Here's the contents. As I mentioned, it's not so much a book of dragons as it is a book of alternatives for your, remember OD&D, right? The wood grain box or the white box. Alternative classes for your characters to choose from. And so it's a really odd list. I'll read it real quick because in case it's not easy to see. We're going to cover some of them, not all of them. In more detail. The arch villain, which is basically just someone with a really low charisma who would be a bad guy. A brigand, just a run-of-the-mill. A weird dragon, a cave dragon. The executioner, as you might imagine, carries the battle axe. The half ogre, the hunter, the illusioner, the physician, the sand merc, which is a creature, the seductress, the templar, like Knights Templar, the whore, the Costi cat, and the Fagillian birds. We won't cover all of those, but we'll cover some of them. And it's got a drawing at the bottom and a hand-stamped C for copyright 1977. The first one I want to talk about is just what's on the cover, which is the Weird Dragon. It says it's a small, nimble dragon. Can't fly initially. And you may remember Gary at one point had said you should be Dungeon Masters should be open to the idea of other things being characters besides what's listed there. And so here's an idea of some different things you could have. And he mentioned dragons, and here we have a dragon. So and it's pretty toned down. It basically bites for D4, and then +1 every level over 2. So not a lot of damage from the bite. They can become magic users, so that's like a class they can pick, but only up to 3rd level. And then they have to, if they choose that, then they divide their XP between that and I guess their dragon ability, which is essentially fighting man ability. They do have a lot of hit points, 10-sided die, and then once they get to 8th level, then they can fly. Then they have the cave dragon, which they basically, it's not real clear, say as all other species of dragons, and then they have to roll on a 1 or 2. They can't even get through a door, and they basically say these are not good choices. But sort of full-size dragons are not good choices. Here's your half ogre, which is a cross between a human and an ogre. It says they will have poor intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, comeliness, and charisma. And so I'm not sure what game they're playing with comeliness, because this is way before Unearthed Arcana comes along. But they do have 10-sided dice for their hit points. and +5 at first level, so they are tough, right? They're big fighting men types. And then we have a couple here I want to point out. This comes out in 1977, and so may remind you of character classes you'll see in the Player's Handbook. I think it comes out, which I think comes out the following year. So lots of similar ideas were floating in the community, right? So here's the Hunter. Sounds a little bit maybe like a Ranger. His version gives you some thieving abilities and ability to detect passages like a dwarf, extra bonuses for use of a bow, ability to detect, to track. Then we have the Templar, combination sort of fighting man and cleric. Kind of reminds me of a paladin. A little bit of ability for turning undead as a cleric. They can get some cleric spells, and their penalty for that is so they're doing it on the same level rather than sort of being behind like in the PHB. But they make them take off their armor to cast cleric spells, which doesn't make a lot of sense because clerics can wear armor. But anyway. Then we have the Illusioner. Sounds a little bit like an illusionist. It's a magic user subclass, but they take a different tact here, and they spell out at each level what type of illusions they're able to cast. It starts off with inorganic things. Later they can make organic things. Later they can do illusions that involve fighting men or monsters, and then higher level fighting men and fighting monsters as their illusion ability. Then they have this really completely random thing you never see anywhere else called the Sand Merc. Looks a little bit like I think it's called a Vrask, if I'm remembering correctly from Star Frontiers. It's this little four-legged thing with a furry body and a long snake-like neck, but they can use their arms with weapons. They can cast a couple of magic spells, which are cause fear and charm. That's basically their magic use, and otherwise they just sort of would be in the rules like a dwarf or an elf, which, remember, in that case is more like they don't have class and race, they just have classes, so that's your choice. And finally, these totally random things, which aren't character classes at all, there's like a random monster, I guess. These Fagillian birds hang out in pools of stagnant water, and if you spook them, they'll fly, and they fly in a pack, and these little things hanging down hit you, and they can cause poison damage. So just a totally sort of random thing I've never seen before or since. That's it for Book of the Dragons. It's a short book. It's I really like it. It's, as I mentioned, not at all what I expected when I got it, because I had no idea what was going to be in the book. I just knew that it was hard to find, and I wanted to get a copy for my collection. They mention on the back cover, and if anyone ever has that information, please share it, Warlocks of the Dark Star, a fantasy science fiction game they say they're going to soon release. That's Warlocks of the Dark Star. They also say they have some silver military type badges that they would sell you for $2 that says either something like chaotic character, you could wear that to a con, I guess, or I Like Orcs. Just sort of fun. But a really great example of really well done in some respects, very well, just every bit as nicely done as the D&D books at the time, right? That's all the more they were doing for rule books. And another example of how people were making their own rules back in those early days of Dungeons & Dragons. So I hope you're enjoying the videos. As I mentioned, if you aren't, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you know other people who might be interested in this type of video, please pass along information about our videos so they can join, and hopefully they can subscribe as well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.